Hey everybody, it's Jake Tapper for CNN's State of the Union and factcheck.org. And this week we're going to take a look at comments made by Donald Trump about President Obama and the terrorist group ISIS. Here's what Mr. Trump said on Wednesday in Florida.
ISIS is honoring President Obama. He is the founder of ISIS.
The next day, Trump went on CNBC and said this.
He was the founder of ISIS, absolutely.
Is that true? President Obama, who has been sending thousands of American service members into Iraq and Syria to kill as many members of ISIS as they can, is it true that he is actually also a founder of this terrorist group? No, it is not true. Now, one could argue that President Obama is one of many leaders who made decisions that allowed ISIS to gain ground and grow, but to say that he is the founder of this terrorist group, that is decidedly 100% false. But let's go back and take a look at this larger argument that President Obama is responsible for ISIS forming. According to experts, including CNN's national security analyst Peter Bergen and Princeton professor Bernard Hakel, the rise of ISIS begins with a Jordanian thug named Abu Musab al-Zarqawi. Zarqawi was the founder of Al-Qaeda in Iraq, and that terrorist group is the terrorist group that gave birth to ISIS. Now, what gave Zarqawi the opportunity to create Al-Qaeda in Iraq? Well, experts say George W. Bush's decision to invade Iraq in 2003 is a decision that is one of many that allowed Al-Qaeda in Iraq to gain ground. Now, yes, the war in Iraq was authorized by Hillary Clinton, but it was opposed by Barack Obama, who was in the Illinois state legislature at the time. Al-Qaeda in Iraq kept gaining strength. By 2006, it controlled much of the massive Anbar province in western Iraq. In early 2007, President Bush authorized the surge of troops into Iraq, and by the next year, 2008, the U.S. troops and others had helped remove Al-Qaeda in Iraq from the country. So how did Al-Qaeda in Iraq surge back as ISIS? Well, there were 5 big factors. The Syrian civil war. Elements of what would become ISIS traveled from Iraq into Syria to fight against Assad. The second factor, the Bush administration decided to disband the Iraqi army back in 2003 and ban Saddam Hussein's Ba'ath Party. That decision led many Iraqis to join Sunni militant groups, and those groups played a role in helping to professionalize ISIS as a fighting force. A third factor, the incompetent rule of then Iraqi Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki, who marginalized Sunnis to the point that many of them preferred the rule of the Islamist militants in ISIS to the rule of the Shia government in Baghdad. A fourth factor, the hollowing out of the Iraqi army, which simply ran away as ISIS made its most dramatic advances during the first half of 2014. And yes, a fifth factor. According to many experts, President Obama and his administration could have fought much, much harder diplomatically to keep a U.S. presence, military presence, in Iraq even after the status of forces agreement expired. Now, it's questionable whether the Iraqi government would have allowed it at the end of the day. At that point, many experts say, Iraq was more closely aligned with Iran than it was with the United States. But could President Obama have fought harder? Experts say yes. Another mistake made by President Obama is that he was slow to recognize the threat posed by ISIS, famously referring to the terrorist group as a JV team in January 2014 in the New Yorker magazine. Since that summer, 2014, the Obama administration has mounted an increasingly aggressive campaign against ISIS, largely from the air. The administration has proven reluctant to do too much involving too many U.S. troops on the ground. So here's the bottom line. Is President Obama a founder of ISIS? No, that is patently false. It is completely, 100% wrong, unless we're using some brand new definition of the word founder. But does President Obama bear some responsibility for decisions made that created space for ISIS to gain strength? Sure, absolutely, just as George W. Bush bears some responsibility for decisions made during his tenure as president that allowed Al-Qaeda in Iraq, ISIS's predecessor, to also gain strength. But to say that either president is a founder of a terrorist group that they spent thousands of U.S. troops and billions of dollars trying to defeat, that's just wrong. A reminder to all you politicians out there, you're perfectly entitled to your own opinions, not to your own facts. I'm Jake Tapper for CNN State of the Union and factcheck.org.